recording at proper speed today. Okay, so today is all about sending both email messages and text messages from VBA. So kind of a neat day today. We'll cover all that stuff, but we got some stuff to download to start with. So let's see, where is today's day? Oh, here we go. So go ahead and download Send BYU Gmail at XLSM. You'll also need to download this email messages or email message.txt. If you click on that link, it's just going to open it in a browser. So you'll have to right click it. Oh, if I zoom in on that, it zooms in over here too. So you'll want to right click and choose Save Link As to be able to get that downloaded. And just save it in the same location as your workbook. You should be okay. We've got some other stuff to look at here. But we'll come back to these other links. We'll come back to these other links a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Send BYU Gmail. So it turns out, normally I like to start with as blank of a workbook as possible. But if we did, it would take us 2 days to actually send an email message. So I'm giving you a bunch of stuff to work with. So we've got some data to work with here, but let's take a look at the VBA code that this comes with. So I need to make sure I enable editing. Actually, let's kind of talk through the example that we'll be doing. Content, whatever it is, I guess I enable it. So what we have here is data from the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau. Probably should download some fresh data because this is getting kind of old. Since probably some of you were 2 or 3 years old when this was happening. So these are complaints that people have made to the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau. So here's Evelyn Sabo. That's a fictitious name. But she really was from Finksburg, Maryland, or he, I don't know. Wrote a letter in the year 2000 about a Chrysler Jeep Cherokee, a 1990 Jeep Cherokee that failed. The problem, she wrote the letter in 2000. The failure happened in 1992. It took a while to get around. It had to do with the brakes. 2 people were injured as a result. And here's the complaint. The paint is peeling off in sheets. Well, we got to get the paint in, but the brakes are the real thing. The brakes don't slow the vehicle consistently. Sometimes when you push on the brake, it's like you don't have brakes. I'm not quite sure what it says. Anyway, so you're dealing with the original complaint. So here's the idea. Suppose that you've been taking a job at the NTHSB, or you've got an internship there, and they say, great, you've got these 200 folks that you've got to correspond with about their complaints. And so step 1, you figure, is to send them each an email letting them know you've been assigned to the case. And that's where the message file comes in. So that message text document, so a problem with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee, and of course these are parameters we'll have to fill in. Dear Evelyn, with your first name, when I heard about the trouble you had with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee, I was deeply troubled. I have recently been assigned to your case. I wanted to give you my contact information and let you know that the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau is currently investigating the Jeep brakes for a possible recall. If you would like to provide any more information about the incident you experienced back in 1992, please don't hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, agent name, safety analyst, and your phone number. Okay, so that's the idea. So we're starting with some of the scaffolding in place, and we're ready to make a loop. We'll go through these 200 and actually send some messages off. So let's take a look at what it takes to send an email message through VBA, and see some of the background in that, and then we'll get down to business. So you'll notice there's 2 modules here. One is module 1, and that's where we'll be working today. This example takes a lot of variables to be declared, and so I just said, you know what, let's just declare the variables up front so we can start with those. But let's take a look at mod Gmail. So mod Gmail is where I have a couple of functions predefined that will actually send mail. So one is called Send BYU Mail. I figured you all have credentials here at BYU. And so you can use those credentials to send mail. So we'll do that one first, and then we'll also see how to work with Gmail. So this is the function, send BYU mail. It's one that I wrote, copied the example from somewhere else, and then modified it for our needs. So we're going to give it a send to. That's going to be an email address where we want the message to go. Send from, this is the email address that we're sending it from. Who's this coming from? Now we have to get authenticated to be able to send the message, and so we need your net ID and your password. And then we need a subject and a body, and optionally, you can specify the path to an attachment. So if you want to attach a file into this message, then just have to pass the path to that, and it will get attached. All right, so very similar to when we're working with databases, we have the notion of first getting connected to the server. Once we're connected to the server, we'll use that connection to be able to do something, whether it's in the database world, it's either sending an insert or an update statement, or it's asking a query to bring some records back. Here it's going to be to send a message. So we have two objects to deal with. We have a configuration object and a message object. Now, in the past, when we've created objects that haven't been a part of VBA or a part of Excel, we've had to add a reference. And that's the nice way to do it because it gives you, if you add the reference, you'll get IntelliSense help when you're using those. But since we're not really going to be modifying this, I wanted to show you the other approach. So there's actually a language difference in those two. So when we, in design mode, when we come and say, I want to make a reference to this, that's called early binding. While we're designing, we're binding onto the object class that we're going to use to create these objects. This approach is called late binding. The binding doesn't happen until the program is running. And so in this case, we declare our variables just as objects, not as some kind of mail server and some kind of message object, but just as object variables. And then we bind them onto the results of this create object method. So instead of saying new object, we say create this object, and at this moment when this runs, it tries to find out if it's there. If it is, it succeeds, otherwise it throws an error. So this CDO stands for Common Data Object Configuration is the kind of thing that we need to be able to connect to and talk to a mail server. And the messages will allow us to specify the details of the message. So let's look at the connection first. The connection object is going to have several properties. They're specified in a little bit odd way, but whoever wrote the function, or whoever wrote this object is allowed to make it happen however they want. And I'm not sure exactly the details why the names of these properties are like full URLs. But it is HTTP schemas, Microsoft.com, CDO configuration. It's a configuration object. And I've just put that into a variable so these lines don't get so long. So that schema is coming in here as we're setting this property. And then we're just appending onto the end of it send using. So there's a property called send using. It's part of the configuration object, it's a part of CDO that Microsoft did. But we're just sending a value of 2. That's the same as the constant send using port. That just means we're going to specify, there's a couple different ways I can contact a mail server. One is to specify a host name and a port. That's the approach that we're going to use. And that's the way it works for every kind of email server except for an Exchange server. So if I'm going to talk to an Exchange server, it's a different game. But regular old SMTP server, SMTP is simple mail transfer protocol. It's the way we normally send mail. Then 2 is going to be the value for this. The server then that we're connecting to, here it is, gateway.byu.edu. That's where your mail goes out. The port that mail server is listening for traffic on is port 25. I've got to be able to specify that. Am I going to use authentication? The answer is yes. So this is using basic authentication. I'm supplying the net ID and the password as passed into the function. And are we going to use a secure socket layer? False. So the data between my machine and the mail server is not going to be encrypted. So if someone's snooping around the network, they'll read my email. That's just the way it's set up to work. And then we update the fields, and that connection then is ready to go. So assuming that you're going to be in some other environment somewhere at your company and you want to be able to send email out, you're going to have to find out some things here. Probably you'll need to find out at least the port and the SMTP server, the outgoing mail server that you're using. You'll probably fiddle around with these other ones to see which one actually will let you send the mail. But where are you going to find that information? How do you find it out? Talk to someone in OIT who knows that information. Someone's going to know it. And the reason they know it is because if you want to set up, I mean here, this stuff's published at BYU, because if you want to set up a standalone mail client to work with your email account, like if you want to use the Mac program Mail, do you use Mail? Yeah, so you need to be able to tell it how to connect to that mail server. This is the information they need to know. So it's a normal thing to be able to say we've got parameters to let a program talk to the mail server. It's not unusual. It's a little more unusual that you're writing the program that does it, but that's okay. All right, so that's the configuration object, and now we have the message. So again, similar, we've created a message object, bound it to the message variable, and now we're just setting up the parameters. So send to is, again, the email address that we're passing in. That's who we're sending it to. Send from, that's who it's coming from. We have a subject and a body. Now, this body property is a text body. Almost every mail client today that's being used can handle more sophisticated page descriptions than just text, right? It looks like a nice page with fonts and tables, and you've got a graphic on the email that you get. Even if you get just an email from a colleague, quite often they've got like their signature showing as a graphic in the footer. Those are all HTML messages. And you have the ability to specify both a text body and an HTML body. Right now, it's only set to specify the text body, but you could also specify an HTML body. It's a little more work because you've got to actually build an HTML document with all the tags and everything, and then you can send that. But that means when it comes to the recipient, they see a very nice looking email message. You can actually send both, and then the client can decide which one to show. The client software will say, oh yeah, I can show an HTML message. Here's the HTML message. Or if it can't show an HTML message, it'll just show the text message. So you can send both if you want. We're just going to stick with the text message. We're sending simple messages. These other ones I don't think the protocol allows for them, but neither the Gmail server that we'll work with nor the BYU server will let you specify a separate server sender name here to appear. I just don't think it does. But I left them in here because there are properties that, depending on your mail server, you may be able to specify. Now, you'll notice that our last parameter in this function is an attachment. That's just a path to a file that you want to attach. And so we have an if statement. If attachment is greater than 0, or greater than a 0-line string, that means you gave me a path. Then we're going to call the add attachment method with that path. So it's not a property, it's a method, which means you can add multiple attachments. You can say add this one, and then add another one, add another one, add another one. But the way I've set this up is it's only going to do one, right? You give me a single path, we'll add it, and it's the way this function is. To be simple, it'll only take one attachment. It's to show you that you can add attachment if you want. We're not going to do it in class today. But you could modify this so it can do multiple files as an attachment. We then are going to connect up the message and the configuration by setting the configuration property of the message equal to the configuration object that we established. And then we're ready to send the message. Whew, it's a lot of work to get here. This may fail. Anytime you're working with, trying to communicate with a server on the other end of your request, it might fail. And so we're going to have this in an error block. So on error, resume next, just keep on moving. And now we're calling the send method of that message. Okay, great. So we just tried to send it. If error number equals 0, what does that mean? No error. There's no error. So I'm going to set send BYU mail equal to true. You'll notice this is a function, not a subprocedure, and it's a Boolean function. So this function itself will return true or false depending on whether the function, the call to send the message was successful. So if there's no error, set the return value of this function equal to true. Otherwise, set it to false. And also print out some information so I can see what's going on. Lots of things can cause it to fail. Username is wrong, password's wrong, if the port's wrong, if the message, if the email I'm trying to send it to is malformed, the server will reject it. That's going to give an error. These will all be different errors. And so it'd be nice to get the error, but I'm hopeful that we won't even see the error message. But if it is, we'll get some description printed in debug.print. And that's it. Here we're just deleting those objects out of memory. Shouldn't really be necessary. When we hit the end function, this process should happen automatically. But those two lines are in the example. I copied this from a decade ago, and so they've been there ever since. Okay, so that's kind of the process. It may very well be that you don't have to modify this much at all. If all you're going to do is send either from BYU or Gmail, these things are set up and ready to go. I wanted to go through that so that if you find yourself needing to go and say, I've got to make some changes to this to work with my new company's mail server, you'd have some background on what's going on. Okay, so let's just go ahead and see if we can send our first message. I'm going to come back here to Module 1. And we have here, you'll notice we've got a message and a subject variable. So let's go ahead and set up our first message. So I'm going to come in here and establish the subject. And that will be Independence Day. A little plug for what I'll be doing this summer. Message is going to be equal to come to the Colonial Heritage Festival. At the Sarah Park in Orem, July 1st through 6th. No, sorry, 2nd through 4th. It's a week long. 16th. This is the largest American colonial living and reenactment event in the Western United States. We're going to set up a whole colonial village. I'll be there running the print shop. Any of you been to the Colonial Heritage Festival past years? No one? Well, come see me at the print shop. I'll help you print a copy of the Declaration of Independence, something like that. Okay, so I got a subject and a message. Now, I need to get my username and password. I could hard code these, but I'm going to use my real BYU username and password so I can send this out. It wouldn't do to record that. In fact, it wouldn't do to even show it on the screen because no doubt somebody would take a picture of it and you'd be like, quick, go change my grades in Learning Suite and log in. So, okay. You really wouldn't do that. I wasn't accusing you. All right, so fortunately, we've got a form here called form password that's just set up to take in a username and a password. So that's delightful. So we're going to use that to be able to pull these, and we've got a username and password variable here. So we've got my message set up. Maybe the very first thing we'll do is show that form. So I'm going to go ahead and load the form in memory before I show it. So load FRM password. And then let me change a couple of those things because I really didn't like, this is set up for Gmail, so the caption is Google credentials. I've got some labels in here that I would like to change. And so let me go ahead and just change those. So FRM password dot caption is going to be equal to BYU credentials. And I'll change a couple of those other labels that I have on there. They're actually called labels. When I made them, I wasn't intending to change it through code, but they're called labels 3, 4, and 5. So label 3's caption is going to be net ID. And then we'll have 3, 4, and 5. 4 will just want to be blank. And 5, we want to say password.
You want to add a P to caption.
Caution. Caution. Thank you. And then I should be ready to show that, to be able to show that form up. So FRM password. Show. Should pause the code there until the user closes it. Now what I do on this form is the user hits cancel, I clear out the password, set it up to blank. So whether the user hits OK and the password is blank, or they hit cancel, the password will get blank automatically. That'll be my signal. We don't have enough here to authenticate. Let's get out of here. So I'm just going to say if FRM password dot txt password dot value is equal to a 0-line string, then exit the sub procedure. Get me out. Otherwise, we've got a username and password. We're going to try to send a message. And so let's go ahead and record the username and password. Username equals FRM password txt account dot value. And then something similar for password. Whoops. PW, my other variable. These variables are declared up here. They're pre-declared for your programming convenience. And then instead of account, it'll be password. So that's kind of a lot of overhead to bring in, but this should show the user form, allow the user to type in a username and password, and then either if they hit cancel, that'll let us out. Otherwise, we've got a username and password, we're ready to try to send a message. In fact, now we've got a message. So let's go ahead and try to send it. We've got a subject, we've got a message, so I'm ready now to send a BYU mail. Let me do this. Let me put an if statement. If send to BYU, because remember, it's a Boolean function. It returns true or false. It's successful. I'd like to be able to see which one happens. If send BYU mail, open parenthesis, send to. At this point, we're just kind of hard coding it to see if we can get it to work. So I send to, I'm just going to put in here as, I guess I'll send it to the Colonial Heritage Foundation. You'll probably want to put this, you want this to be an email address that you can check. So we're going to send this to an email address that you have access to. So we can see it here. I'm going to have one of my email accounts here. HERTAGE Foundation @gmail.com. Send it from, I'm just going to put here gov@byu.edu. Now my net ID, I've captured in my UN password here, so username, password is PW, we've got a subject, and for the body, I've got message. So this function is going to try to send that message. If it's successful, it'll evaluate to true. And we'll stop here. Otherwise, it'll evaluate to false, and we'll stop here. So this is just to see which one of those two stops it hits. We'll know which path it came through the variable. I think I'll be able to send that message. Let me go to my Colonial Heritage Foundation account. I had a bunch of people send me messages in the last hour. That's okay. Anyway, the last one came in at 3:13 p.m. We're now at 3:54, so we'll be able to see what we got with the message. I'm going to go ahead and run this procedure. And we'll see that I've successfully updated that form, BYU credentials, net ID, and password. Allen2. Password. Looks like it hit the stop inside the if. So just to point out, if I come in here, I should be able to see my username variable should be set. So what's username? It's gallen2. What's password? I'm not showing you. So let's go back and see if that message came through. So here it is at 3:54 p.m. Here's that message I just composed. It's from, I got 20 of them. You all sent them to me. Oh no, this is the same. It's the same message I used from earlier today. So just going back to 224, the last example. Okay, so 3:54, come to Colonial Heritage Festival, the Sarah Park Forum, July 17th. It really is a great event. To find a larger colonial village, you've got to go to Colonial Williamsburg. There will be close to 200 volunteers there doing various things, cannon, all kinds of military stuff, bakery. It's there. In fact, I used to be the baker. That's why this picture shows me, you can't see it very well, but making bread there in front of a wood-fired brick. All right.
We go back to the code.
Yeah, the code. I know the code's more interesting than the festival, but here's the code. Oh, and did I mention it's free? So, bring the family. It's a great time. All right. So that's the mechanics. How many of you successfully sent a message? Oh, very good. So now the interesting thing here is that you could put any email address you want here. Let me change this to my Gmail address. gov.allen@gmail.com. Now wait, where am I sending this through? I mean, this is send BYU mail. This is hard-coded to go through the BYU mail server. Let's see if it takes it. Play. Yeah, didn't reject it. Let's go look at the message. This one is from gov.allen@gmail.com. Did govallen@gmail.com send this to me? No. What's going on? Why am I allowed to do that? And the answer is the SMTP protocol was written in 1971 before there were evil people in the world. On our networks, in fact, the protocol was meant for a secure network, for a trusted network. And so the protocol allows you to say, we don't care who sent it, you can tell us who sent it. And whatever you tell us, that's what we'll say sent it. How many of you have gotten an email from someone purporting to be from someone you knew, and it wasn't from that person? It's because the protocol allows it. Now, they have other security in place. It's really interesting that BYU lets us do this. So you could. In fact, a whole bunch of people in the last period sent messages to their fellow students as if they were from me. I don't know how I feel about that, but I can't stop you, so you have a good time. So that's just kind of a security thing. So why does BYU let this happen? There's a couple reasons. The big reason is they haven't had a scandal, where someone came and abused them. The second reason is they're logging all the mail that gets sent. It's not when they send mail. It's not like they go, "I hope that was okay." They're going to keep track of that, and they're going to know who sent that message. So they will record which account authenticated with that, and the message that went out. And so they can track it. They can track you down if they have a mind to do it. So on the one hand, it's some exposure. On the other hand, things are logged, so they'll be able to track it. Go ahead.
So does it even matter what username and password you enter?
Does it matter what username and password you enter? The answer is yes. It's going to authenticate you with this username and password. So that can fail. Go ahead and try it with the wrong password. Try to send it. It should just tell you it's failed. Go ahead.
I'm kind of confused though, because so the send BYU mail is a function, right?
Yes.
So, and you if that and when you if and you do the function, and then you just say then and after then you just say stop, and it still works. I don't know.
The question is why you're asking. Why is this working? How can I just put a function here in the middle of an if-then statement? And the answer is this function itself returns either true or false. Let's take a look at it. So here's the definition of the function. It's a function. Go to the end of the line. The type here is Boolean. So this function is true or false. And then depending on when I go to send the message, here, I say message.send, if there's no error, if error number is 0, then this function will return true. This establishes the return value of true. If there is an error, it returns false. And so I can read the function back here in my code, and remember, everything that goes between the if and the then has to evaluate either true or false. This function itself evaluates the true or false. So if this function sends back true, I come in here. If it sends back false, I come in here. And the whole point is that when we go to send all these messages, when we try to send this message to Evelyn, if it succeeded, we want to put the date that it was sent. We want to say, send it this date and time. If it fails, we want to know that we tried, but that it failed, so we can not repeatedly try to send the message or to send it again once it's already been sent.
Okay, and another thing is so when you run it and the form will not pop up and you suppose in your net ID and your BYU ID, right?
Right.
But then the one in the function is a form of Gmail. And how can that still work though?
So are you saying here that how is it that we can say this is from the Gmail account?
Yeah, and so why it's not from BYU BYU system and that still works? Because for me, you want to send email, you can log in that email account and send email.
Yeah, so the question here is, hey, this seems wrong. It seems like there's something fundamentally wrong here. I authenticated at byu.edu, at gateway.byu.edu, but the mail server is where I authenticated, and yet it's letting me send a message that says it came from someone else. And the answer is, the protocol was written a long time ago, and it's a deficiency in the protocol. Now, this mail server could decide, I don't care who you tell me it's coming from, I'm going to say it came from this account. And that's exactly what the Gmail server will do. You can pass it an email address that says this is who it's from, but the Gmail server is going to ignore that. And it's going to replace that in the message that goes out with the account that was authenticated. So in the very early days of Gmail, not only could you specify a different email address than you used to authenticate, you didn't even have to authenticate. You could just say, send a message to this IP address. And they would just take it and they would just send it on. What happened? What do you think happened?
Spam.
Spam happened like crazy. And so Gmail had to say, okay, you can't do that anymore. You're going to have to authenticate. And I'm not sure how soon after they said you have to authenticate, they said, yeah, and you can't specify some different email address that actually got sent. Go ahead.
I just sent a message to my email using someone else's email, and it still showed up as that, but it had a flag saying that it might not be that person.
Ah, yeah. So mine probably has that same flag here. So let's come into here now. Yeah. So this is my Gmail client looking at this saying, this message may not have really come from govallen@gmail.com. But that's just something that this client, or actually, it may very well be the Gmail server that accepted it. I'm not sure exactly where that's happening, but yeah, it's looking at this going, this looks fishy. Like it might be phishing. So, right, okay. So anyway, that's a deficiency in the protocol, and it's something that could be exploited. I'm not suggesting that you should exploit it, but helping you to realize it's not difficult to make an email that's purports to be something other than it is. You should have you've got reason to suspect that when someone sends you an email that doesn't quite seem right, maybe it really isn't right. Okay, question?
So have you taught this and then had somebody cancel class on your behalf or something like that?
Oh, no, they talked about canceling class.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, but yeah, could you do that? Yeah. Like you could send a message
Yeah,
to the rest of the class as if it's from me. Class is canceled today. Have a great vacation or something. And I mean, what would I do if I caught word of that? What do you think I would do?
I don't know.
Like, cool, class is canceled. Probably not. I'd probably
They send it to you as well.
Yeah. Keep me in the loop. Don't make me show up. And you got to give everyone else the day off.
You're like, well, I did teach them that.
So I mean, if depending on what it was, you can kind of track it down. What do you think? Do you think that's an expellable offense at BYU? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so depending on what you did with it. If you did it as a prank, if you did it and it didn't cause some harm, or you tried to affect your grade or something, I can see you getting expelled from it. Go ahead.
When you send it from this, does it connect to your Google account and show your picture?
Is this? So
we just tried it, and it does.
It does? So it's
Well,
just someone else's
it's
picture?
because it's stored on your end. So your Google account is what saves people's pictures. So when it comes to that email, it does show their picture.
we're spending too much time on this. That was supposed to be just a footnote. It said, make sure you're careful about this. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so we're doing pretty good here. Let's go ahead and start to integrate to actually send out the data. Oh, no. Because some of you may want to do this with your Gmail. In this next part, let's talk through about what it takes to do Gmail. So quickly, I'm going to come back to my Gmail module. And here's another function called send Gmail. It looks almost exactly the same. One difference is it has a from, but it doesn't have a username because at Gmail it doesn't matter. You can't specify a different from than you can a username. And so there's one less argument here. I literally just copied the function and changed the parameters. It's a different port. It's a different mail server. It's using a different, it actually uses SSL encryption here. And so it's configured a little bit differently, but that'll get us connected to the server. And then the rest of this is just the same. So you send a little bit different information. It connects a little bit differently, but the rest of it's just the same, right? It attaches the same way. It tries to send the message. It returns true if possible, otherwise it returns false and gives you a description. Okay. So one more thing to be able to show here. As you may have guessed, Gmail has been abused. in the past, as we've already mentioned. So there's a couple more things you have to know about working with Gmail. So first, let's talk, how many of you use two-factor authentication to log into your Gmail account? You log in and it sends you a text message before it lets you log in. And have you gone, no, username and password's enough for me. Okay, so that's most of you here. So there's two different things you'll have to do depending on which of those two approaches that you use. So if you just use username and password, you're going to have to allow less secure apps. Let me show you this. So you'll follow this link, and you're already logged in here, and it says, all right, you're going to want to go to the less secure apps section of my account. I'll follow that link, and then right here, if you're going to allow less secure apps, you just click that on to on. It's probably off by default for you. So what this says is that when you come to log in at Gmail online, it says, you know what, we keep track of lots of things. We're keeping track of where you've logged in from before. How many of you you went somewhere on vacation and you logged into Gmail, and when you logged in, Gmail sent you another email that said, hey, something fishy is going on here because someone just logged in from Cozumel.
Right.
Yeah? So that's Gmail saying, we're doing some things to protect you here. If all we know is username and password came in, that's less secure. We don't have any way to know if it's really you. It's username and password. We don't have any of our other heuristics that we use to protect you. And so they're saying, if you're going to authorize an email client to send with Gmail, you're going to have to specifically say, allow less secure apps. Otherwise, we're going to say, no, can't send. So that's one thing that you'll have to do. Now here's the limitation on Gmail. You can only send, it used to be true, I'm not sure if it still is, but you can only send 500 emails a day on your Gmail account. You can only send 100 emails a day through a less secure connection to Gmail. What they're saying is that people are doing this to spam and whatever, so we're going to limit your ability to spam 100 messages a day. And so they're trying to kind of just put some controls on the account. If you want to send through your Gmail account and you use single-factor authentication, you've got to turn on less secure apps. Okay, now let's suppose you do use two-factor authentication. You cannot turn on less secure apps. If you've got two-factor authentication, then no. You've asked for more security, we won't let you do it. There's something else you can do, and it's only available if you have two-factor authentication. That's this app password section. Let's take a look at it really quickly. So under app passwords, kind of the same thing. You go to your app password section. Let's see, only if you've got two-step verification. How to generate, go to app passwords. Now, the account I'm logged in right now is going to ask me, oh, yeah, who are you here? All right. And it's going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. This is not available for your account. Why isn't this available for my account? I'm not using two-factor authentication. It's a really frustrating message because it doesn't tell you why. You just think, oh, it's broken. Wow, something's broken at Gmail. Interesting. But let me take this same URL to an account where I am using two-factor authentication, and let's see what happens. So in this account, I'm using two-factor authentication. It's going to want to know who I am again, no doubt. Now it says, all right, here's app passwords. So it looks like I've got one app password here that I created March 13th, 2017. Probably the last time I taught this content. I'm going to come here and make a new one. So I will just come here and say select app. I'll put a custom name. This is for Excel VBA. And I'll generate that app. I'll generate that password. It's thinking about it. It's generating it. Here it is. So I'm going to copy that password and say done. Folks, when you say done on this, or if you click off this, that password is gone. You will never get that password back. The whole idea behind an app password is to say, I have generated this password for a single application to use. And that now shows up here. It's created today at 4:10 p.m. It's the Excel VBA here. So when I decide I don't want that app to have access anymore, I don't have to change my password. What do I have to do? Just delete this password. And since I'm going to publish that password, I think I'll delete it right now. I really want people to leave my account. Could they do more than just email if they got into that account? Yeah, that would give them full access to my account. So you still have to be careful here. You're not limiting the scope on the back side. It will give you full access to that account. So that is the app password. So if you've got two-factor authentication, set up an app password, and then that's the password you'll have to enter when you authenticate. Okay? All right, so that's kind of what you have to do on the back end of Gmail to be able to make this work with Gmail. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually do the work of sending out all these messages. All right, so let's take a look. We've got, our data starts here in column B, and the idea is once we successfully send a message, we're going to note that we've sent it over here in column A. Let's go ahead and get ourselves started. I've already got a variable defined as R. So let's say R equals 2. We are going to do until this worksheet, it's labeled data, but the name of the worksheet object over here is letter. So I can just say do until letter.cells, row number R, column number 2, dot value is equal to a 0-length string. And loop, I'll come in here and say R equals R plus 1. I'll go ahead and throw a do events in here as well. And so I now have the ability to iterate through my data. I should go through that whole list until it gets to a blank line. And so now let's actually go ahead and get our message configured. So actually, even before we get to this loop, I am going to want to read in that template file, that file that we read that we're going to try to send everyone. Again, I have a variable already declared. In fact, every time I say I've got a variable declared, you can trust me, it's going to be declared up here. But I have one called template. So I'm going to come in here and just say template. I'm going to open that file first. So open this workbook .path concatenated with backslash, and then the name of it, I think it's called email message.txt, email underscore message.txt, is that what it's called? Email underscore message.txt. I'm going to open that for input as number 1. I'm going to close number 1. And then my template is going to be equal to input from that file. So I got taught how many characters I want to read in, and then the file number 1. The truth is, I don't know how many characters are there. I don't care how many characters there are. I want them all. Fortunately, there's a function that tells that for me, and that is called LOF, length of file number 1. It's kind of a weird looking line, but a template variable equals input, that many characters. How many? All the characters from file number 1. We then close the file, and I've got the variable here in my template. So now I've got that thing, dear first name. When I heard about the trouble you had with your 1990 word. So now I've got to, it's a little bit of work to get this message going, but I've got to pull all the data off that row and start to plug it into this message. Well, I'm going to go up here and copy all of these capitalized variable names. Those are all the ones that I have in that file. I left them in capitals so we could see these. I'm going to bring these down inside my loop, because inside this loop I've got to define what all of those are. So I'm just going to paste them in here. And then I don't need these to be declared in here, so you just highlight this block. I'm going to delete the dims and the add strings here. So Control H, look for dim, replace it with nothing, replacing only the selected text. And I'll do the same thing for as string. And I've got a colon on the end here that doesn't belong. So technically that's okay. It just says two statements on the same line. And we'll get rid of that. So now model year is going to equal letter, the name of my worksheet, dot cells, row number R, column number, wherever the model year is. I'm going to leave that blank for now. I'll put a couple of quotes in there because I'm probably going to use column letters instead of numbers. Dot value. So I just want to say I'm gonna pull the model year, equals. I'm gonna pull the model year from some location on the current row of that worksheet. And I'll plug all the rest of these in. Some of them will take a little bit different. Let me get that. Like agent name. I'll just hard code this as me. You put your own name in here. Agent phone, 801, 422, 006. I don't know if I'm going to get calls from the YouTube audience. Okay. So now I just got to go figure out where model year is. It's going to be a little bit. Maybe what I'll do is, I guess I'll just work through it. My model year is, it's K, so that's column K. What's my next one? Fail year. Oh, I got a fail date here, so this is going to be L, but I want just the year of that. And it actually is a date in the spreadsheet, so I can just ask for the year of whatever I have in that cell. So year is just a function, essentially you got a date, move back the year off the date. So my make, that's going to be column I. And next I have model, that's going to be column J. And what else do I have? First name, that's column B, I knew that one. And then the system, that's here in column M. But I don't want the whole thing. I want only whatever comes before that first, whatever comes before that first colon. So let me go ahead and do this. I've got a variable called position, POS, equals in string, looking at, starting at 1, looking at, I guess looking at this. Position is, looking at that same thing, column M. Looking for the colon. So that should show me the position of that colon. So then, what I really want here is just everything to the left of that. So I want the left of what's in column M on my current row to the position minus 1. I don't want the colon, that would be like it went up to the position, so position minus 1. That should get all my variables set up and ready to go. Looks pretty good. So now I've just got to replace all of the tags in my letter. I got to find where it says first name, and I got to plug in the person's real first name. Good news, the person's first name at this point is sitting in a variable called first name. So I'm just going to say my message equals replace, look at my template. I'm going to look for something inside of brackets. I'm going to replace it with something just as a string. I'll do a couple of these, we'll talk about it, and we'll do the rest of them. So I'm looking for, I'll just do this model year. I'm looking for what says model year. And I'm going to replace it with variable model year. I don't need those quotes there at all. Variable model year. The next one's going to be the fail year. And I'll look for failure tag and replace it with failure variable. That's the real reason I put those variables in uppercase, so you can paste them in here and it would actually find them correctly because they're uppercase. Now I actually have an error in this code. There's a conceptual error with what I'm doing. My message, by the time I run both of those two lines, my message is going to be wrong. But in what way is it going to be wrong? Can you see it? Go ahead.
So it's not going to replace each of the tags, it'll replace them individually and then reset every
That's
time.
right. The template is being reset every time because I'm saying message equals look at the template. The template's what I read in from the file. And I'm saying take that template from the file, find the model year, replace it with, or the model year tag, replace it with the model year variable. Great. That'll replace all the model years. But now when I do the fail year, what's going to happen? It's going right back to the original template that wasn't changed because that went here in the message. So what do I have to do? Yeah, just change template to message on my second one. And then got my fail year, I'll take this out, and then I'll paste this down the rest of the time. I don't have anything, a bunch of them. And then I'm just going to bring these in. So I've got to do the same thing for make. Model name. First name. System. Agent name. And agent phone. And I had a couple extra lines I didn't. Oh, you know, while I'm here, up here, I may as well go ahead and bring an email. Email's in column 4, I think. Email equals, and then we'll pull in column D. Delete the email as well. Okay, so by here, let me just go ahead and put stop. And I should be able to run this now. It'll prompt for my username and password. And then it should parameterize this message. Let's just see if we get the first, if we get that full message plugged in here. So I'll run to this point. I'm not ready to send yet, so I'll just plug anything in there. And let's take a look at the template. Template should have all the tags in it still. Yeah, and this first line is actually meant to be the subject, but it's in the file here. And then dear, first name, whatever. So now let's look at message. And this looks pretty good. Okay, problem with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee. Dear Evelyn, heard about the problem with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee? I was deeply troubled. Sincerely, all this stuff. Maybe not truly sincerely, but there we go. All right. So now, in our message, we've got both the message and the subject. So the next step is going to be to split that subject off. Well, we're going to do this the same way that we pulled off. Oh, let's make sure the brakes went in right. Something about a possible recall on the brakes. Yeah. Oh, brakes came in all uppercase. That's a giveaway that we're not really sincere. Maybe we should lowercase that. So I'm going to go ahead and while we're at it, let's find system, and I'm going to wrap a L case around all of this. There we go. All right, well this one's not fixed yet, but next time it runs, that should be fixed. Okay, so now let's get the subject. We already have a variable called subject. So let's go ahead and find out where that first line ends. Now you remember the line end, the end of line sequence in Windows is a character number 13 followed by a character number 10. Fortunately, there's a function already built in for this called, I'm sorry, it's a constant built in called VB new line. So if I was to come up here and say, I want to see the left of the function VB new line, I want the left one character. I don't know if they'll see that very well because it's actually a return character, but I can ask for the ASCII value of it, and that should tell me it's character number 13. If I ask for the rightmost one character, it'll tell me character number 10. So this constant VB new line is a string with 2 characters in it. It's character number 10, character number 13. That's the end of line sequence. So if I look for that end of line sequence, I should be able to find the end of the first line. The first place it finds it will be the end of the first line. And so after I've got my message I've changed all the details in my message, I should now be ready to split off that subject. So my position equals in string, starting at 1, looking at the message, and looking for VB new line. Now I should be able to say the subject is equal to the left of the message. How many characters? Position -1. If I get the position, it'll catch the first part of that character turn. It'll put a character number 13 on the end of the subject. We don't want them. But now I want my message to be everything after that. So I'm going to make message equal to the mid of message starting at position plus 2. Oops. Plus 2. So I've got the whole file here, one long string, and I found here's the message, and now here's my 2 characters, the character 13, character 10, and now here's the position that I found character number 13 at. So I'm taking a left of everything before this one. So position is right here, and I don't want to start at position. I don't want to start at position plus 1. I want to start at position plus 2. That's where my text is starting. And so that's why this is position plus 2. Okay, so now I've got my subject and my message separated. Uh-oh, but I've got my old subject and message down here. I'm going to leave that down there. And let me go ahead and copy this line. I'll want this down here at the end because we're going to send something else at the very end. I'm going to copy this line and bring it up inside my loop. Okay, so now let's make sure I've got this done right. I've read in the email, so that's going to be who I'm sending it to. Whom I'm sending it from. I guess I'm going to leave this hard-coded for my BYU account. Remember, if you're using send Gmail instead of, well, you just don't need the username here, but that would be your full Gmail account there. And then I'm going to come here, and username is fine, password, subject, message, that should be okay. So that should show me that I'm sending it. Now, if I'm successful at sending it, what I would like to do is I would like to record that I was successful. And so I'm just going to say in column 1 of my current row, that's going to equal the current time from the system clock, which is just a function called now. Oh, not column D, column A. And if that fails, I still want to put something there, but I'm just going to put failed. The reason that I want to log that these were successful or not is because after this is run, I want to be able to look through. Did the email server even receive all of these? And ones that weren't, I'm going to check the email and see, is the email wrong? Why didn't this one go out? And have to have some way to repair that. But more importantly, is even if I get partway through and there's some problem with the code and I have to start again, I need to know who not to send those messages to again. So let's think about that. Let me come over here, and let's suppose that I got in here like the current day. And I've got that a couple of times here. So this is just kind of simulating that I've got some of these successfully sent. So when I start to run, I don't really want to start at row number 2. Where do I want to start? Yeah, the first blank one here. So before I start sending messages, I'm going to want to find out where I start. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do that, some more efficient than others. Let me just do the kind of, oops, close the wrong thing. Let me do the easy one here. So I've got r equals 2. I'm just going to put another loop here, loop. And I'm just going to start by looking at column number 1, and I'm going to do this until I hit a blank line. R equals r plus 1. I'm just going to count down until I hit a blank line, then I'm in column 1, and then I'm going to continue to try to send messages until I hit a blank line in column 2. So that should count down until I get to the blank line, and then I should start moving. Whew. I think that's it. I think this is going to send them. Now be careful, folks, because if you do this like without a breakpoint in there or some way to stop, you're going to send 200 messages, and every single one of these messages goes to me. So I'm going to come in here, and it goes to a blank line, so let me just come in here and put a blank line without too many of these going. And you may want to change these to an email address or two that you use so you can see it working, right? So you have some way to know that message went through without emailing me and saying, hey, did you just get a message? Said something about your cheap Cherokee? Send it to you or you can look at it. Right, let me just go ahead and we'll step through this and make sure it works. So I'm going to stop my code. And let's see, I want to put a breakpoint somewhere. I guess I'm going to stop right here so we can see it at this point. Okay, I better put my correct credentials in here now. And we'll say okay. Got here okay, so my message, Dear Beverly, that looks pretty good. My subject, problem with your 1999 Dodge Ram. And all these other things look pretty good. So I'm just going to go a little bit of time here. So like that went through okay. I'll run it again. Right now I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to take out this break and just run. Got through it. Got through it. I think that's far enough for now. Should have put 3 new ones on. Yeah, here they are. So put those new ones on. It would have broken. It would have ended the code right after this one. So in terms of having an example that's going to be pretty useful in terms of sending this out, we've done a pretty good job here. Now it turns out doing a mail merge, that's like built into Outlook. Like this is built in. So why did we go through all this effort here? And the answer is there are other reasons that might be interesting that you'd want to send yourself an email or a text message, which I'll show you here shortly. Let me give you an idea. So an example from a former student. So part of the way that he tried to help pay for his school was he knew a lot about musical instruments. And so he would buy musical instruments on KSL when he thought that they could be resold at a profit. And I guess some of these musical instruments, they're like crazy valuable. And the folks that are listing them, they're cleaning out grandma's garage, they have no idea what they're selling. And so using the web stuff that we learned the last couple of weeks, he wrote a program that just every 5 minutes would send a request, a certain search on KSL.com, looking for like saxophone, trumpet, the stuff that he was particularly interested in. And when they came in, if they matched certain keywords, it would send him a text message with the link to the listing. And so he said one day he was sitting in his accounting class, he got a text message, he looked down, and this is more interesting than what's going on in class right now. He followed the link, and he looked at the saxophone that was there, and someone was selling a saxophone for $6,000. But he looked at it and he went, it's an $11,000 saxophone. And so he bought it right there, in class, buying that saxophone. He sold it later that week for $10,000. And it happened because he was able to have that send him a text message while he had that program running at his home to be able to do that. So you take this stuff that I'm teaching you and put it together with some domain knowledge, you might be able to make some money in this case. It's actually how we bought my wife's car. We were looking for a particular kind of car, and we just, I think we did it every 5 minutes, but probably a couple of times a day we had something running. We just checked what are the new Chevy Tahoes that have been listed. And we found one that was like we wanted. I didn't have it send a text message, but it would send an email so we would know that it was there, and found the one that she wanted. It was a good price and bought it. So that can be kind of nice. Okay, so there's real reason why you might do this, not just, we just made a mail merge. I could have done that in Outlook. Okay, so next thing is, after this runs, or after we find a $6,000 saxophone, we want this thing to send us a text message. It's really easy. So sending a text message is just like sending an email. In fact, I've got a page over here called System Info that lists the major carriers and their text-to-email gateway. I'm sorry, their email-to-text gateway. So if you know your carrier here, you can send a message to your phone number at your 10-digit phone number if you're on AT&T at att.txt.net. That'll get routed to AT&T, and they'll go, oh, it's a text message. Let's change this from an email into a text message, and they will send it on as a text message. So the drawback here is that you've got to know the carrier that you're sending it to. If you're sending it to yourself, hey, that's okay. So it's the same thing. It's like sending an email. So I'm going to send this. I'm quite sure I'll probably obscure this before I actually publish this video. I'm not quite sure I'd do that, but I'm going to send this to my 10-digit email number at, I forgot what it is. What is that, Sprint? Messaging.sprintpcs.com. Still coming from gov@gmail, that's fine. Username, password, subject and message, that's great. So instead of this message, I'm just going to put done. So this is not going to run until after the loop has executed, so I'm outside the loop. So message, I'll just put as, or the subject, I'll just put as done. There's no subject to a text message, and so what Sprint does with this, it says, oh, you got a subject, we'll put that at the very top of the text message. You can leave it off if you don't want to have anything at all. So master, I await further instructions. You like my technology to bear me the proper deference. And so this should send a text message to me when we get here that just says, hey, it's time to get back to work. I know you went off to get a ham sandwich while I was running, but I'm done now. And come on back to work. So I'm going to run this. I think I've got my sound on my phone. Sounds like it was successful. Text message came in. And you can't see it, but here it is, master. I await further instructions. 2 text messages from me. Done, I await further instructions. So it's just the same as sending an email because all the major carriers have these email to text gateways. Now, some don't. There's some. How many of you use Republic Wireless? Anyone here use Republic Wireless? I think it's a local company. It's kind of a discount thing. I don't think they have a text-to-email gateway. But if it's a major carrier, you can just send an email. And what does it cost you to do that? 0. From time to time, we'll have students say, well, what if you don't know the carrier and you want to send someone a text message? And my response is, find out the carrier. If you're going to use this way that's free, find out the carrier. Well, what happens if I send it to your number at att.net? What are they going to do with it? Well, it's not one of their phones, so they're not going to route it. So can I just make a loop and send it to all these? And the answer is yes. That would be rude and abusive, so find out the carrier. Anyway, so there you go. That's sending email and sending text messages. Any questions? Must have gone a little too quickly because we've got like 6 minutes to go. I don't have anything else to say. Yes?
So for this one, we're like doing it from our Gmail, but why are you still using the send BYU mail function?
Oh, how am I sending this? Am I sending this through Gmail or through BYU?
Or through BYU?
I'm sending this through BYU, and BYU lets me put anything I want to here as who it's from. Probably shouldn't. Probably should put gov at BYU.
So on the mod Gmail one, can you use that function?
Can you use mod Gmail to send? Yeah. Oh yeah. It works the same because this really is. You are really sending an email message, right? You could use your email client that you use on your computer, and you could send your phone number at your carrier, whatever their thing is, .com, and it would. You're sending an email message. It comes through to you as a text message. That's why it's called an email to text gateway. It's converting an email to a text message. Other questions? Go ahead.
You always have to have the tag at email.com or whatever on the front.
Oh yeah, it's a good question. What would happen if I tried to put my phone number here? I don't know. So let me say this is from 801-555-1212. So that should come through. What will that show? I don't know. Oh, it's an error. It says the email server rejected that. It says that email is not from that because that's not a valid email address. So that depends on the email server you're working with, but that may very well be a common thing. If it's not a well-formed email address, it'll get rejected. Go ahead.
Could you explain that if statement above again? What is it doing there? Like the if statement. Yeah, right.
This one right here?
Nope, up a little bit.
This one here? Oh, okay. So remember, both send Gmail and send BYU mail, they return true or false based on whether they were successful or not. Do you want to see the code where that actually happens in the function, or just want to believe that part?
I'll believe that part.
Okay, so the function itself sends back true or false.
Yeah.
So when I'm sending the message, calling the function is going to send the message if it can. And so I'm just putting that inside the if statement so I can evaluate what it returns. So this is going to return true if it's successful, and if it's true, if the message got sent, I want to write into column A the current time. If it's
and the email variable is getting set where?
oh yeah, I snuck that in kind of quickly. I just put that at the bottom of all of our other parameters here that we were reading off the worksheet.
Okay, cool.
That's why that wouldn't work. That's who we're sending it to.
Yeah.
And that comes out of column D.
Cool, thank you.
Other questions? All right, thanks for coming. I'll see you at the Colonial Heritage Festival in July. Class dismissed.